All right, folks, I think I'm gonna get started. Do you see my screen? You do?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Do you hear my air horn?
Yes, we
Okay, I'm
do.
going to another right now. Goodbye.
Kyle, I actually don't really care about your content. I just want to hang out with you for one more hour before you leave us.
That's what I figured. Okay.
So how did you set up the soundboard?
I'll cover that at the end. Don't you worry. We can chat about that. I'm gonna talk about making course notes, things that I've tried at the college. Let me just click on here so I have the ability to go to the next one. I'm gonna start talking just a little tiny bit about like note-taking culture at the college, a little bit of a look into the past at what I've tried or some frustrations that I had in the past with making notes. A little bit looking forward into how I'm hoping to start making course notes. And then, of course, there will be some lovely demonstrations of some of the things that I've tried and I'm going to be pursuing. So I'm going to start with note-taking culture. And this is something that surprised me when I first became a teacher at the college, is that there wasn't really a note-taking culture amongst the students, and that in our department specifically, there was a culture of providing notes to the students, like note packs. And at first I found that to be a little odd because when I went through U of M, we were all taking notes, and I just sort of thought, if I had to do it, then you all have to do it too. But I quickly was won over to the idea of having like well-developed course notes to go with courses. And although I still encourage my students to take their own notes, I don't think that it's as necessary if we sort of provide some stewardship around the notes. I don't have any textbooks in my courses, so it's basically just the course notes that I use. So so I think that's also something that we need to talk about with instructors that come into the department. So if someone is new to the department, is being onboarded, that's a bit of like departmental culture that we don't really explain. And I think it's sort of a stance. I don't know if we're alone in the college and how we treat it, but it's definitely something that I initially found odd, and then immediately it was like, oh, I see the point of it. This is great. But then I started to try to figure out better ways to make notes, and that's what I'm going to be talking about today. So we're going to rewind about 12 years ago. So I think by 12 years ago, I was at the college about a year at that point, and I had started to think about the pain points around course notes, because I wanted to continue to provide them for the students, but I wanted to make it easier on myself and my fellow instructors. And so at the time, there was a mixture of technologies used for making notes, and some of it was Word, and some of it was PowerPoint, and some of it was PDF. Some of it was HTML, and some of it was like this weird mixture of, you would write the course note in Word, you would run it through a program that would convert it to XML, and then you would run it through another program which would convert it to HTML, which would then be embedded into our learning management system at the time, which was like Blackboard. That was the worst of of the solutions. Although once that whole process was done, when that was embedded in Blackboard, it actually worked really nicely. Some of the course notes when I took over a course were just straight up missing. And, they had existed at some point, but we had things like a course repository that instructors were supposed to copy notes into, and it wasn't always done. So I did take over a few courses where there just were no notes, or just a very small subset of notes. And then all together, it was really hard to find a solution where it would be easy to edit the notes and immediately republish them to the learning management system. And so I came up with a little bit of a wish list, and this isn't the exact wish list I had at the time. This is me with my 2020 hindsight, looking back to thinking about what I probably had as a wish list back then. Number one was like course notes that were editable across sections. So if you were in a course that had a large number of sections and you had to make edits to course notes, having those edits done once and having that data federated out to all of the sections was something that I was looking for. Learn eventually created something that sort of allowed for this, but it was never a full solution. There's like the learning repository, so that idea was out there, but there wasn't a really a solid solution for it. And I think now Learn is recommending against even using that tool. I wanted the notes to be embeddable, and this is because what I saw from the weird hokey system that was like Word to XML to HTML. In the end, when they were embedded inside of the learning management system, it was way better than having them outside of it, because the students always knew where to look for everything. I also wanted some way to. I'm a programmer, so I'm lazy, right? That's one of the attributes of a good coder, is to be stubbornly lazy. And so I didn't want to have to first write notes and then write slides for presentation. I wanted a tool where I could have the notes and the slides built off the same source and used in one place. And then I was also taking over a course at the time, which was a Ruby on Rails programming course. I'd never done any Rails development, and I thought that before teaching Rails, it was important that I had like one production project under my belt. And so I decided to build a course notes tool using Rails that sort of covered off all of the things that were in my wish list. And so I will give you a quick demonstration of that, because that's the tool I've used for the past decade. And it looks a little bit like this. This is sort of the back end of the site. Students don't see this portion of it. This is where I have my various courses and the notes in which that I've developed for those courses. And for any one of those, I can click on a particular set of course notes. I can see all of the subtopics in that particular module. I can edit any of those things. Edit the title, edit the contents. Everything is just saved in plain text, so that it would be easy to export if I ever moved tools. I can sort of navigate between the various sections. I'm going to talk a little bit later about something called Markdown, which is going to take some of the content here, and when it sees like asterisks like this, it's going to know to turn it into a bulleted list when it becomes HTML. And then the end result of that is this course pack, which here is this same bulleted list here that I defined here. And right now it looks like PowerPoint. I can sort of click slide by slide by slide, but when I embed it into Learn and I hit a hotkey like this, it becomes a set of notes for the students. And so there's like a table of contents at the top, and then it's a set of notes for the students. And this is also embeddable inside of Learn. So here's Learn, here's that same set of notes, but now it's embedded inside of the learning management system in my sort of master shell. So that's the system that I built. I've used it for the past 12 years for almost all my courses. At some point, it's still being actively used in WebDev 2 and in Full Stack. And it's clunky in some ways, but it's served me well, right? I could address all of those early pain points and all of my wish list, right? I have a single place to edit the notes. It's federated out across sections. Yeah, it has that integration of the notes versus the slides all coming from the same source. So it's working for me. I will just return here and talk about thinking about the pain points that I see now. So there's still no native Learn solution for this, and I'm not necessarily sure that I would even want one at this point, because I want a solution that's flexible in a way that maybe Learn couldn't offer, right? I want things that are very specific to computer programming notes that might not be something that Learn would want to offer as a solution overall. I also want something that solves the bus problem. What happens when Kyle gets run over by the bus? Right, so that's something Alan and I talked about over the years. You know, one of the other solutions that we've used in the web group to solve some of these problems of course notes is to move our notes into Google Documents, and that allows them to be collaborative and easily editable and embedded in different course sections. It hits a lot of those the wish list. It doesn't quite solve the bus problem because at this point, you know, those course notes that we've developed in Google Docs are attached to our personal accounts. But I think what we were going to do there is, you know, maybe have like a Red River account that would also be given editor access or admin access there. So that's one of the current pain points. Student expectations also on what good course content looks like or what good learning content looks like have changed. A lot of our students have done really slick online courses that have you know, learning material that is just very, very well developed, interactive, entertaining, all that kind of stuff. And then I'm also, in everything I do at the college, I'm always looking for 1 decade solutions. So something that I can pick and I can work with and tweak over time, but that the core of the solution lasts at least 10 years. I've tried to build courses in that way as well, just to make it a sort of a sustainable practice, and because I'm a lazy programmer. So what's my wish list now for 2020? This is the old wish list. I no longer need practice with Ruby on Rails. I don't even really fully value the idea of the integrated slides anymore, because the way I present most of my courses is done through live coding. So I'm not actually using those PowerPoint slides myself anymore, although I think those are still probably would be important for others. I didn't even flag Embeddable as a key feature for my notes. And the reason is the embeddability was nice, but when I embedded something like this, it wasn't very navigable, right? It's got this look how long it is. It goes on forever. So that's not very good to navigate. And then I tried to put in this table of contents here where it was clickable, but because it's embedded in Learn, the links, the link worked. That's because I have to use the one that is, I was all excited there for a moment. When I'm actually in Learn, the links don't work, because it's an embedded technical idea is that it's embedded as an iframe here, so the links just don't work, and that's a deal with how iframes work in embedded web pages. So the embeddability piece was not as big of a concern for me anymore. I still think editable notes across sections is hugely important, but more so the ease of editing and republishing, I think, is if there's some big hokey complicated process that you need to go through just to fix a typo in your notes, then you've definitely done something wrong. I still, even more so, like the course notes, that a tool that I built before, it was really just for me, and it's worked sort of well, because in the courses where I've used it, I've been the one sort of making updates to the notes, but as I said, with other aspects of the courses, when we want to work in a more collaborative nature in the web courses, we've used things like Google Docs to allow us to be collaborative. And now I wanted to go beyond just instructor collaboration. I want students to be able to contribute to these notes. If a student sees a technical error, I'd like them to be able to flag it and even submit like a fix to it. And I'd also even like to be able to collaboratively build up course notes. I'm starting in the game development program. There's a lot of course development that needs to be done, and in some of the courses that course development might be done fairly bare bones, and I'm hoping to cajole the students into actually helping me build the course up as they go through it in a collaborative way. Syntax highlighting was something that I added into my system early on, the one that I built before. And for the non-programmers in the room, syntax highlighting just means that source code shows up in a way where specific keywords and specific syntax is specially color-coded, and it makes for sort of parsing and reading the source code. It makes it look more like it would when you're actually coding in an IDE or a text editor. And so I wanted that to be present, and that's something you definitely don't get with Google Docs, right? So that's a real downside of putting these notes into something like Google Docs or even like Office 360. And then I wanted the notes to be searchable by the students, and then I wanted them to be interactive, and that's the student expectations piece, right? My kids have grown up in a world where Google has always been there. And so like their favorite phrase is like, search it up, Dad, search it up, search it up. Like I can't say I don't know to anything anymore, right? And it's great, because you can always search it up. And they believe so strongly in the ability of search it up. Like, they'll ask me to search up anything, like even if it's impossible that could even be on the internet. It's like, let's search it up. And sometimes I've been wrong, and it has been there. And then interactive too, right? So as I mentioned earlier, a lot of students have grown up with these sort of interactive educational packages that they've seen at school or that they've paid for, and so their expectations are sort of high these days. So now for another demonstration. Oh, we need a sound for that, don't we? I think so. Are my sounds gonna work? There, some sort of sound. Maybe R2D2. There we are. Okay. So these are the latest versions of the Web Development 2 notes. They're currently running on my own machine, but they'll eventually be available online. Instead of just a single set of single course pack here, it's all the notes for the entire course. They're navigable with this little menu on the left. That's why I don't think they would work as embedded content within Learn. But as you see, you sort of click here, and you can either have a module be still like one large page. So here's a module which is sort of one large page, and it has a table of contents at the top that actually works. But what I've started doing is I've taken a module that was a bit longer and a bit more complex, and you can actually break it down into subtopics. And so this is the intro to the PHP programming, and then it's got all these little subtopics, and each subtopic has like a little mini table of contents within it. So when students are later maybe using these notes as reference, or they want intro to PHP for loops, so they just go to that section, and there's the example of the PHP for loop. The other thing is that they are searchable. So again, if I wanted to search for a for loop, I could just start searching in for, and I would find forums, but I could also find for loops, and then I could just click on it, and there it is. There's no need for a backend server or database. Like, all of the searching is done with JavaScript right in the browser, so it doesn't, the hosting of this becomes really, really simple. Editing of these notes is also quite simple. I can click at the bottom of any of these pages. I just click a little link, and that takes me to all of the notes are actually on GitHub, and they are fully editable. I can just click this edit button. I can edit my notes right here. So here's the for loop that was defined right there. Maybe I didn't like that space at the top of it. I can erase that. Other instructors could be given access. I've already added Jody and Alan to this repository, and they could also edit these notes right now live. The minute they click save, they'll be immediately republished to the website without any intervention. So you don't even have to do anything. You just save the notes, and boom, they're republished live for all the students across all the sections. And students can also go to this page, and they can also edit the notes. And when they do it, they don't have write access to the repository, but it creates what's called a pull request, which is something they're going to need to know about in industry anyways. That's basic version control. And then they can make a pull request into your project saying, I request that you pull my changes in because I made a fix for you. And I would just see that and be like, thanks. You get a virtual high five. Boom. So it covers off a lot of those bases. And if I go back again, I'll leave this page here. It also covers off the interactive piece, because I've also figured out a way within these notes of embedding programs that actually run live within the notes. And so I'll find one that I like here. These are all little embedded bits of source code, and they're all sort of runnable. So if here's one bit of embedded source code here. It shows the source code right now, and I click this results, and then it actually live executes this code in the browser, and the students can interact with it. If they want to actually edit this code and make changes to it, they just click on this edit button here, and it brings them into an editor in their browser. And then they can actually make changes to this, save a copy of their changes, share it back with me, share it with their peers, and they can also, it's on the CodePen website, they can also make a digital portfolio of really interesting code demos. And they could base those code demos off of what they've seen in the notes. And so it's got that interactive piece as well. And so let me just see, did I cover off all the things that I wanted? It is easy to republish. It is collaborative. Oh, yeah, it automatically syntax highlights all the source code, so that was just an automated process. I also made it so that like if you had diagrams in the notes that you want to display small and then have them sort of in a larger form, you can click on them and it opens up a bigger version of the picture. So I built in little extra things like that as well. I'll go back here. And so some of the technical aspects of what's going on behind the scenes is that it's like my old course node pack. I really like the use of this thing called Markdown. It allows me to write my notes in just plain text and have them converted into HTML. And so if I want a heading in the output HTML, in the plain text, I just put a hash mark in front of it. If I want a level 2 heading in the text, I just put 2 hash marks in front of it. And Markdown is used all through GitHub whenever anyone interacts with an open source project, or you leave a comment even on the Reddit website. It's all done via Markdown. So most of our students already know Markdown. If you want a bulleted list, you put asterisks. If you want to bold something, you wrap it in double asterisks or italicized. You single asterisks. You can embed links in a very easy way. You can make tables in a very easy way. So that's part of what powers this system. The other thing is a tool called Jekyll, and Jekyll transforms your plain text into static websites. So it's what handles the transformation from Jekyll to Hyde, which is like from the plain text into the HTML. And it does so with Markdown. You can build just static sites like the one that I showed you, or you can also make blogs with Jekyll. And there's also Jekyll themes. And so that's the second part of this here, where it says just the docs. So I found a really nice documentation theme for Jekyll, because Jekyll's not just for making documentation. So I went and searched and tried a few of the themes available. And just the docs gives you a really nice way to organize the various submodules. So it's what created that side bar menu that was present there. And even the nested menu, it handles that. It allows you to generate all those table of contents that you saw, and those are all automated. Because again, lazy programmer, I'm not going to sit there and like write bullet lists for all my things, and every time I change a module, I got to go back and change the table of contents. So I needed that to be generatable. And it also handles all the searchability, so I don't have to worry about the notes being searchable. The theme, just there's some magic in there, some wizardry in there that handles the searchability. And lastly, maybe not lastly, we're getting close. We're at 2:30 here. Okay. Markdown, Jekyll, just the docs. Oh yeah, it's all hosted up on GitHub. So not only is it editable on GitHub, it's also hosted on GitHub. And so I'll show you what I mean by that. Earlier I was showing the version that was just hosted on my own machine, but here's the repository on GitHub. And then if I click this link right here, here are the actual notes, and they're hosted on what's called GitHub Pages. And so they have a stungeye.github.io website. You know, if we were using this at a more departmental level, we would just have a departmental account on GitHub for that. And if I get back into here now. So GitHub Pages turns any GitHub repository into a web page, and it has Jekyll built right into it. And so all of the automated building and bundling and stuff like that, I didn't have to do any of that myself. All I had to do was get the structure of a GitHub project into the structure of a Jekyll project into a GitHub repository. And then anytime I commit a change to that repository, GitHub Pages automatically rebuilds the Jekyll site for me, and that's just a setting in the GitHub repo. I just sort of say, make this repo have GitHub Pages enabled. And so GitHub Pages is free to use. So any repo that you have, public or private, you can turn it into a GitHub page. The pages themselves are public. It uses Git source control, so you can sort of feel confident that you're not going to lose access to these notes. The entire course pack can be backed up very easily as a zip file. So if you were worried if, you know, it ever disappearing off GitHub, you could have a download, or you could, you know, download once even every term to do a backup of the project. And GitHub is now owned by Microsoft, and so this is I know there's an argument for like college supported tools. So maybe like we're a Microsoft shop at the college, and Microsoft owns GitHub, so maybe we could have GitHub somehow adopted as a college supported tool because of that association with Microsoft. I just think it's a really slick solution, and what we were talking about at the you know, before this presentation started, that idea of publishing some of our course content online, that piece is actually present here, because, you know, if I use this for my course notes, then these course notes are publicly available. But my argument really is that the course notes aren't the course, right? Students, what they aren't paying for is our notes, right? Because they can get that elsewhere. What our notes are is it's our curated look at a particular topic that's tailored to what we want to teach. But all this information is out there, so we're not really giving away anything special if we give away the course notes. If anything, someone stumbles across these notes and says, boy, those are really well put together, I'd like to go to this college. Anyways, I have no personal belief in copyright or intellectual property, so that's the bias that I'm coming with there. And lastly, the interactive code piece. And so the interactive code in the notes was handled in the demo that I showed you by CodePen. When I showed the part about editing the notes, that's done. That can be done with the free CodePen account. But if we were to pay $100 a year for a Pro account, then the editing could be done right within the notes themselves. You wouldn't even have to leave the context of the notes. You could, inside of the notes, change the code and immediately see the changes reflected on the right, which would be pretty amazing for things like teaching CSS, where it's all about sort of tweaking properties and seeing the results. And you could have that like right live in the notes. So when the students learn a new topic on styling, then they can immediately play around with it without leaving the context of the notes. And CodePen is just one possible solution. And so there's another one that I'll show in a moment called Code Sandbox. Both of those are fairly web focused, but for our courses that are not webish, there's also something called REPL.it, and I'll show that just really quickly right now as well. And so if I go back to the course notes, specifically the ones that I've got hosted on my own machine, if I scroll down, so these are the notes where we saw that there was some of these embedded CodePens. And if I go further down, I've embedded a few other things. And so this is an embed from another product called Code Sandbox. And so this is sort of the output of the code that's been embedded. And if I slide over, then I get access to the actual code. And I can actually see a whole project here right within the notes. And I can go to the index.html, for example, and I could make a change here where I say, like, put an H1 in there and say, hello, everyone. And then if I was to slide back, I don't know if it immediately does it or whatnot. Uh-oh. Oh yeah, I can't just change that one. No, it's because this is a JavaScript project. I would have to go in here and do that.
Well, wasn't there a little refresh button that popped up near the bottom?
Oh, was there? Let me see. I think I'll also put one in here just to see. There we are. Get rid of that, and then I will look for the refresh button. Oh, there is a little refresh button. The WAT, see, the WAT came up immediately. Editing that index.html, that might just be a function of the type of project this is a JavaScript project, but you can see the WAT is there, and I could maybe even change it live like that. I can. And so that is sort of slick and neat and editable all within here. And you have a full editor. This is an embedded version of the VS Code editor that a lot of our students use, and it's just embedded right in the website. And then for instructors that don't teach the web courses, there's this project called REPL.it, and you can embed any language in the course notes. And so here is a Ruby application. It's a short little Ruby application, and it queries the Star Wars API and prints out some information about the characters and planets in Star Wars. And if I just click the play button here, it'll actually execute it right inside of the course notes. And there's Luke Skywalker, and that's pulled live from the API, you know, right as we're watching it. And again, that is fully editable, so the students could go in here, they could make changes, and then they could run that. I also tested it out for Java. Just click run. I've got a simple for loop that prints hello world 10 times, and so it actually compiles and executes the Java right inside of the browser. And then even C#, which is another one of the languages that we teach, can be, you know, compiled and executed right inside of the browser. So it's got something for everyone. It's free as well. It also has a pro account that can basically turn one of these embedded code samples into something akin to Google Docs. So if I go to share here, there's a multiplayer mode, and you can invite people to all have simultaneous editing access to this this code. And I've actually used that a few times when I was going over student submissions. I would say, well, who wants to quickly hop in here and paste in what they developed for their project or this week's challenge, and show the class what we did. And then once I had one student do it, well, then everybody wanted to do it. And one by one, we were demoing everybody's code all live within the browser right while class was happening. It worked out really, really well. And it was a little bit better than sharing a Google Doc, which I've done. Sometimes if you share a Google Doc and give everybody write access, the memes will come out right away. But you can't post memes into a text area here. So that was a nice little benefit of that.
Yeah. Too bad kids these days don't remember how to do ASCII art.
I was just thinking that. Yeah, you could go to you could even go copy and paste some ASCII art from a website. And yeah, I think that's it. I've gone on for about 40 minutes there, or maybe 30. And so thank you very much for listening, and I hope you found that valuable. And what are your questions? And if you don't have any, that's totally fine as well.
Any chance that any of those shells you had running have like basic Unix shell functionality?
Oh, that's interesting. Like, so, like, what would you
Like
want?
you
Specifically?
showed
Like
Java,
like a terminal?
like a bash.
Like a bash.
Yeah, like a terminal, like a bash shell.
Let's see.
It would be a good. I'm just thinking because it would be good
Yeah,
to,
look at
rather than them spinning up Debian.
So yeah, there is a bash.
Brilliant. Can you just type in nmap for me? Enter. Okay.
So it's probably like a
All right,
pretty
still better.
slim, but it looks like you can write bash scripts and run them. And I don't know if you have, yeah, you have some terminal access as well.
Still, that's better than nothing. That's pretty cool. Thanks, man.
Yeah, and you could, again, you can embed that right in some course notes.
Yeah.
So Kyle, would someone with my technology skills be able to manage something like this?
The setup is a little bit, it took me a while to get the setup going. Once that's in place, giving someone who, doesn't have like programming experience, for example, edit access, then editing would be totally fine. You would need to pick up the basics of Markdown syntax. You would need to get a GitHub account, but then you'd be able to add to the course notes, no problem.
So if we did this at a departmental level and we had a few people that understood like how to set it up and maintain it, then like the Markdown thing didn't seem too difficult, right? You just have to know the syntax, like you said, for bullets or heading 1 or heading 2 or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
So if we wanted to adopt this on a wider scale for the department, it would be doable if a few people had the know-how, right? Like, and there are so many tech people that would have probably very little difficulty.
It would be doable. You might want to look for even like there are even simpler solutions. So this one I was trying out, like I was looking for the Cadillac of solutions. So I was trying to put like the whole kitchen sink in there to mix metaphors. And so I think you could even find a simpler solution that would still involve GitHub and all of that, but that might not. The Jekyll piece was a bit complex.
Okay.
And the other half of the Jekyll piece I didn't show, which is like this is Jekyll running on my machine, so I can edit all of the files locally. I can basically take that entire repository, bring it onto my own machine, and then I can host it on my own machine so that as I'm making changes, I can see those changes in real time. Whereas when it's on GitHub, there's like a 30-second delay between when you submit a change and when you can see it. But when you're developing course notes, you probably want to be able to see what it looks like right away to preview it. And so a solution where the people that were doing fairly extensive development, it would be nice to have a solution for their own machine that wasn't as technically tricky. So like to get Jekyll going, I had to install Ruby on my machine. I had to embed it inside of VS Code. There was more than, it was tricky.
Yeah, maybe if we're not, like, for those of us that aren't teaching any coding or anything, maybe just a simpler solution is just to use OneDrive and collaborative files and just link to them, right? Because that kind of gets the basics, but it's super easy.
Yes, I really like. We've used like Google Docs for years, and it's been really nice. Using like Office 360 is, I think, just as nice. The one thing I have found though is I don't know if it's as easy with Office 360 to share things that the students don't have edit access to. I know there's ways of doing it, but I've messed it up a few times, and I've shared things with students, and then I've realized, oh, I shared like the editable link. And they were kind, nobody edited my stuff. But I was like sending out things like spreadsheets that were going over like, when they were going to get marked. So they could have gone and like moved their names around, but they didn't. But I made that mistake a few times. Whereas with Google Docs, it's very, very simple to say like, this is sharing, but it's view only. Like it's a read only.
Right.
Yeah.
It's exactly my experience too. I found OneDrive kind of tedious to share intuitively, where Google Drive was always just super easy. And it, like Kyle said, is something we've used for probably a decade now.
Yeah.
So it's just been easier to use.
Nico, I see your hand up.
Yeah. So I'm thinking this is some kind of structure or mechanism I would prefer. So the thing is, somebody in our department set the central repo there, and everybody else just fork the repo. And when they make any changes to their repo, they just need to know how to create a pull request, and then everything would be fine. And so the final result would be got proofreading by somebody. So it's not too complicated.
Yeah, and the nice thing, Nico, is that for someone who doesn't need to or want to know the ins and out of like Git version control, they can just simply do the editing right within the website itself, and that the web tool will actually create the pull request for them. They just have to click save, and it automatically submits the pull request. And so and that's what would happen with students as well. They wouldn't need to even know fully Git version control. They would just go to the document. I can pull one up here. And when they went to click this edit button, they would get an edit view, but instead of seeing a commit changes button at the bottom, they would just see a submit pull request. And when they click that button, the pull request would be initiated, and me as the sort of the owner of this repository, I would see that in my list of pull requests, and I could handle everything else. And that everything else is usually just clicking a button that says accept pull request.
Yeah. So in a simple sentence, for Cal especially, so don't care about what Cal just said. You just need to click several buttons, and then everything will be fine. Yeah. So the other thing is I'm doing EA once a while for an instructor. And after I came back to the same instructor, the assignment or project have changed a lot. I want to know what have been changed, but currently it's a little bit harder for me to find the changes. But if we have the Git repo Markdown and I can compare the versions, that will be much better, easier for me.
Yes, and so what Nico's speaking to there is that, like, you can see each one of these things here. This is me making my updates to these notes over time, and so there is sort of a history of the changes that have been made to any one of these course packs, and you can sort of see in each one of them what the actual difference was. So you can sort of see, you know, what was removed, what was added, what was modified.
I didn't think of that. That's a huge advantage actually for people teaching a course for the first time, or for maybe a course they haven't taught in a year or two, or EAs who haven't been in the class for quite a while.
Yeah, it gets a little bit out of control because it might be like I'm making little tiny changes. It's not as nice. It might even be nicer to go like the route that they do in open source projects, and you just have like a file in the root that's just called the changelog, and then you just add
that's right.
changes in the changelog, and then you could actually in that changelog you can point out specific commits and say in this commit that we did this fairly big thing, and then you could link right to that commit.
Right. I mean, going to a commit where you just remove that space from your
Yes.
PHP block,
Exactly.
you'd be like, okay, I just wasted 5 minutes.
Yeah,
You know?
or if you look here, like I was doing a lot of editing of the README file. Look what it says over and over and over.
Right. Yeah.
It's, like nobody needs to see that, but it's yeah. So it may be a mixture. of being
So
able to
Kyle,
do
you have some commitment issues there.
that. Yes, I do need to be committed.
That's a lot of commits for one file.
Where's the put up bump sound? That's what I
Yeah,
need.
Oh,
where's
now.
my-
yeah.
where's
I've got it. I'm on
Okay.
this.
Thank you. Wanted my rim shot.
There you go. So yeah, that's all I got for you folks. Anyone else have any final questions or comments or anything?
Can we hear
This is
all your
great.
sounds
Thank
that
you
you
very
have?
much.
Sorry, there was two of you at the same time there.
I was saying, can we hear all of your sounds?
At the very end, I will do every single sound. Miguel, did you
Okay,
also
I will
have something?
leave. I will leave before that.
I just want to say thank you very much. Amazing lecture you had today.
Oh, thanks, Miguel. Thank you.
You were
Yeah,
going to
thanks for
share how you
showing
do the
us.
sounds.
Oh, I was going to share how to do the sounds. Yeah. Okay, here, let me show you. So I've got this beautiful tool called Voice Meter Banana, and it's a virtual sound patching board. So it lets me like reroute sounds on the computer. And so, you know, when you pick like which device you want to use in Teams for your microphone and your video, the Voice Meter Banana creates like a new virtual device. And so you pick that as your microphone, because your microphone's the only way to get sound into Teams. And then I can use this to feed other sound signals in on the same channel as the microphone channel. So it's acting like an audio, an audio mixer, but you know, a digital one. And then I have this other program called Renaissance, which lets me map hotkeys on my keyboard to various MP3s. So I've grabbed a bunch of sounds and I've mapped hotkeys to them. And the combination of the two, you can see here, this is my microphone sound. And this right here is the sound. No, this right here is the sound of the soundboard. And then those sort of get routed together, and that it gets fed into Teams. And I can route other things, like if I want to play YouTube music at the same time, I can play that here, and I can either route it just to my headphones. Sometimes when I'm lecturing my students, they don't even know that I'm listening to music while I'm lecturing them. Or I can sometimes just turn that music on, and then they can hear the music with me. So yeah, this is my setup.
Okay, but I have
Not
a question.
available for Mac.
Why did you choose the banana instead of the potato?
Yeah, there are a whole bunch of different versions of Voice Meter out there. I think I could even get away with, is potato the more basic one?
No, potato is the ultimate version.
Okay, so there's even one that's less ultimate than banana, and I think I could get away with just using it, because I'm only really using one hardware input and the aux And I didn't want to. Basically, I went and saw what people do when they use Twitch. So like game streamers and stuff like that, they all use Voice Meter Banana. So I went and watched a few Twitch streamer tutorials and thought like, how are these Twitch streamers doing it? Because I hear them triggering sounds and doing cool stuff. And so they're the ones that taught me. You can blame the Twitch streamers. And when I first did it, I didn't realize how loud the sounds were. I've got them turned down now compared to how loud they were. So I think I blew the eardrums of my students out a few times with this one. But it woke them up at 8 in the morning. I'll tell you that.
I suppose that would work at 8 in the morning.
It does. It definitely does. And then like sometimes at 8 in the morning, you just need like a laugh track as well. That's like that's an important